gallivanting left, right and center, from corner A to corner B, from restaurant A to restaurant B, from hotel A to hotel B, you know, from location X to location Z. All of this, you know, you've been exposing yourself to certain things, certain conditions that you must be mindful of that are of national health concern. So as of this morning, we highly recommend that you check your status, because here at Morning at NTV, we are going to be checking on the status of HIV, on the status of tuberculosis, as well as malaria in Uganda. There is a high burden of these communicable diseases, with malaria, tuberculosis and HIV, of course, representing a major public challenges for us as a country, and also accounting to the significant portion of mortality and morbidity that is particularly among children and also the vulnerable population. So that being said, today we want to do the check and balances on these diseases, and we're being joined by Mr. Henry Mutebe, who is the technical advisor with the Uganda Country Coordinating Mechanism, and this is for the Global Fund. You must welcome Henry.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
So let me first put you on the spot. Last week we had World Condom Day. Some people have been thinking that condoms is a conversation of olden days. Why are we still talking and commemorating World Condom Day in 2026?
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, in a world that is getting complex in terms of technologies, sometimes the simplest tools actually remain the most effective. And even with all the advances that have been made, condoms remain the most effective in terms of providing triple protection. Condoms help you to avoid STIs, HIV, and unintended pregnancies. So condoms, and also condoms are very cheap. So even as, I mean, they've been around for a long time, and people are thinking, you know, we should be forgetting condoms. They are still the most effective tool that actually offer triple protection. So every 13th of February, the world commemorates International Condom Day as a way of celebrating efforts that have been made to ensure that populations are protected, that we are managing our population through the use of that simple but very effective tool called a condom.
Okay, that being said, when we look to HIV particularly, and somehow it also correlates with the tuberculosis, where do we stand as a country? Is it serious a public threat as it used to be in olden days?
Yes. Interestingly, people think that HIV has gone away, but actually HIV is still a very big problem. Globally, there are about 39.9 million people who are living with HIV. But if you zoom in and bring it to Uganda, we have 1.5 million people who are living with HIV. And unfortunately, HIV has a gendered face. Out of, for example, the 1.5 million people that are living with HIV, 930 are women. And then 530,000 are men. And then about 70,000 are children. So HIV is still a big problem in Uganda, and I think because the young population, for example, I think the butane burden for them is that they didn't see the brunt of AIDS in the 90s. So it's a beauty because they didn't have to see that, but also it's a burden because they don't appreciate the gravity of HIV. And even when we've made a lot of advances in providing prevention tool, we've expanded the prevention toolbox, we've done a lot of awareness, we still have 37,000 new infections per year. In 2024, for example, we had 37,000 new infections. So you can see even after about 30 years of efforts to end AIDS as a public health threat, we still have 37,000 infections. And unfortunately, out of those 37, most of them are occurring amongst adolescent girls and young women. So
that being said, where did we drop the bar as a country that is now causing us to face this reality of 37,000 new infections on an annual basis?
I think that there's one, I think we've a bit dropped the ball in terms of prevention, but also I think we are also not following the data. For example, we know that HIV in Uganda, the prevalence is about 4.9% of our population, the general population. But HIV in Uganda is concentrated within the key populations. For example, according to population size estimates done by Uganda AIDS Commission and Ministry of Health, there are about 130,000 female sex workers in Uganda. And you know the prevalence within that population is 31%. So out of the 130,000 female sex workers, we have 31% are living with HIV.
Okay.
Then if you go to another subgroup within the key populations, we have men who have sex with men. The size estimates show that we have about 22,000 of them. Again, also in that population, out of those 22,000, about 12% are living with HIV. If you go to men who inject with drugs, it's about 8%. Now, what is interesting is that the size estimates show that we have 1,000 females, girls, who are injecting with drugs, but the prevalence there is 24%. Then we have fishing communities, about 730,000. The prevalence is 23%. You have 60,000 people who are in prisons, and the prevalence there is about 15%. And then a bit of the refugees and migrants, which is about 1.3. So we need to focus on where we need to know where it's burning the hottest and deploy resources. So it's burning the hottest
in adolescents who we can't say predominantly are sex workers or injecting themselves with drugs or are in fishing communities, even though fishing communities are regarded as highly sexually active communities. So for the elements of our adolescents, where are the gaps?
I think we have socioeconomic drivers that are really mediating this, the transmissions. We have issues around poverty. So you have some adolescent girls and young women who are driven into sexual transactions as a way of meeting their socioeconomic needs. You also have gender and power relations. You find, for example, that adolescent girls and young women have less power to negotiate safe sex. So as a result of that, they become vulnerable to the men who have the resources. But also, you asked a very interesting question in terms of where did we drop the ball. I want to go back there a bit. So out of the 1.5 million people who are living with HIV in Uganda, the government has done quite a commendable job on the HIV front, with about 1.3 million on treatment. And the beauty about it is that we have what we call the U equals U, meaning undetectable equals untransmittable. So if you take your treatment regularly, as advised by the doctors, and then you suppress your viral load, meaning you've minimized the way the virus is multiplying, and it becomes so low you can't actually transmit. So the strategy for one of the strategies for ending HIV is what we call the 95-95-95, to mean that our target is to make sure that out of all the people who are living with HIV, 95% must know their status. Then out of those 95% who know, 95% of them must be enrolled on ART to receive treatment. And then we deploy all the resources and ensure that 95% of those on treatment are suppressed. So it means that even when you have 1.5 million people who are living with HIV, if you can achieve 95% viral load suppression, it means that you have only a few who are actually transmitting. But because we have 1.5 million people living with HIV and only 1.3 are on treatment, we have another 200,000 who are out there. They probably don't know their status, or they know but they are not on treatment. So that is where the epidemic is where we're having issues in terms of containing the transmissions.
Henry, we have 4 years to the commission we made to ourselves as a country through the Uganda AIDS Commission to have 0 new infections by 2030. This is 2026. These figures are staggering. How or what are going to be the contributing efforts to bring these figures down?
One, for me, I think that first of all, we need to follow the data. There's a lot of debate around especially key populations and what sort of services we should offer. For me, I think that the national response must follow the epidemiology. If we know where the transmissions are, that's where we should deploy the resources. 2, we need to mobilize domestic resources. Like we've noticed in the last 12 months, there has been a lot of policy shifts in the global north that have triggered funding cuts. For example, the Global Fund had initially committed to provide Uganda with about $600 million over 3 years, from 2024 to 2026, end of 2026. But because of the funding cuts by the US government, which is the biggest contributor to the Global Fund, there was a reduction. And therefore, we must start looking inside. We must start mobilizing domestic resources. I think we also need to do more on social behavior change, because I think that if you realize in the 90s we had, the prevalence was quite high and we didn't have ARVs then. But if you look at the curve, it actually started going down as a result of efforts around social and behavior change campaigns. But I think for our young people, maybe we also need to improve the prevention messaging. Maybe if you say, for example, AIDS kills, it is not something that registers in their minds. If you look at the way they consume information, you have a lot of young people online. So we need to find where those young people are and deliver messages in a way and a language that they understand. Otherwise, I think we also need to improve in that area of prevention messaging. There's also a lot of information fatigue. I think people have had these things for ages and it doesn't seem to register anymore. So we need to reinvent ways of communicating with young people.
And another, let me use your own words, beauty and burden. One of the beauties that has come out is actually how government has deployed so much in terms of the fight against HIV, but also to help those that have contracted the disease have a sustainable and fulfilling life. And in as much as that has been a take on the side of government, to the younger generation, it's been perceived as, no, HIV is like malaria. It's like flu and cough. You just take medicine and you'll be fine and life will be okay. Perhaps that message has triggered the young people to go like, it's not a killer disease as we're being told after all. So there's so many options in the market that we can use. It's not as bad. How do we deal with that mindset gap?
Absolutely, it's a delicate balance, because you want to package the message in a way that does not stigmatize as well, but also deliver it so strongly that it actually punches. So I think that the people, I'm sure people at the Ministry of Health must be having a very good conversation in terms of how do we reframe the messaging. I think, but what we need to make clear to the young people is that HIV is still a big problem. We don't have treatment that cures HIV right now. So if you catch HIV, you're going to deal with it for the rest of your life. And it also has a very big impact on the economy of the country. You know how much we spend on each HIV patient? About 1 million shillings per year. So you can imagine how much we have to spend, times 1.5 for a long time. Because once you get HIV as it is now, you're going to be on treatment for the rest of your life. So if we manage to bring down the curve, if we can bend the curve, then it means we also save resources that can then deal with the socio-economic needs of this population. So the young people need to, the government has provided, and partners have provided the medicines, they've sent out the messages, but it's now up to the young people to take charge of their bodies and take health choices. Okay,
you did also give us a breakdown of the statistics of the 1.5 million Ugandans that currently live a positive HIV life. You do have 930,000 of those being women and the 500 being men, 500,000 being men. How are we having male involvement in the fight against HIV/AIDS? Because it takes two to tango and get the condition, primarily from, except for the rare other ways you can contract it, primarily it's through sexual intercourse.
Yeah. I think why, for example, one, of course, they are still around cultural norms, and health-seeking behavior. We know, for example, that every year we lose about 20,000 Ugandans as a result, or people, not necessarily Ugandans alone, as a result of HIV. But out of those 20,000, 8,700 are men. So while you have more women who are living with HIV, it's actually more men who are dying. So there are issues around the health-seeking behavior of men, but also because, for example, now it is mandatory that when a woman goes into a clinic for antenatal, they are tested for HIV. If they are positive, they are enrolled, but also they get information. So I think that's one window where we need to engage men more, so that as women go for antenatal care, the men are also being engaged at that point, because those are also opportunities to, one, provide information, but also to ensure that they are tested and provided with initiated on treatment if they are living with HIV. But also all other programming must be also male friendly. Let's put it like that. There's a lot of, men see things differently, and women see things differently. So again, it's back to the ministry that does the framing of messages to see, okay, how do we package the information in a way that can be consumed by both genders? How do we ensure that people can access information at workplaces? Because we know that a lot of also men could also be an issue of work, that you enter your workplace at 7, you leave at 7 p.m. At what point do you get information? So also we need to rethink how we are sending out information and providing services to ensure that the cultural and occupational dynamics don't take out one gender from accessing information.
Okay. Also briefly, can you talk to us about the status check on HIV and its correlation or interlinkage to tuberculosis?
Yeah, so now we have every year we have about 96,000 TB cases in this country. And TB is a very, very bad disease, but it's also one that can actually be treated. But the relationship between it and HIV is that what actually HIV does is that when you get the virus, it overruns your immune system. So now you become vulnerable to every type of disease, malaria, diarrhea. So what HIV actually does is to open the window for all these other infections. And TB is a very aggressive disease, and it actually accounts for 30% of AIDS-related deaths. And also, when usually if you're tested for TB and you turn out to be positive for TB, it means that your immune system has gone down. So the next question the medics will be asking is, why has this immune system gone down? So sometimes they actually advise, it's actually advisable that you are also tested for HIV, because it could also be an early indicator. Not in all cases, but sometimes it could also give indications that this person could be having something extra. So when you're dealing with HIV, you have to deal with TB because it's the biggest contributor for mortality in persons living with HIV. So we have about 96,000 cases of TB cases in this country.
Speaking of mortality, malaria continues to be one of the contributing diseases to child mortality in our country. Even after all the many interventions and good interventions that the government has put out there, the call to action, the awareness programs, sensitization programs, we still find it a difficult disease that is challenging our health status as a country. Where are we in terms of tracking this disease to the end?
Yeah, so every year we, at least as the data we have about, I think over the last 5 years, last year is when we had the lowest number of malaria cases in this country. We have about between 13 to 14 million clinically confirmed malaria cases. And the biggest victims of this disease are children under 5 and pregnant mothers. So malaria is a very big problem. It contributes to mortality, but also reduces productivity. So it's also a disease that we have to tackle. And interestingly, and one of the challenges we have is that a lot of people asymptomatic. So for example, right now you could be having malaria, but because your immunity is good, it won't present any symptoms. But
so that being said, Henry, as we close this conversation, what's your call to action?
Yeah, for me, I think one, I'd like to appeal to our young people to take charge of their bodies. You have one body to live in for the rest of your life. So you need to make health choices. You need to ensure that you protect yourself. It is very clear what needs to be done. But also we should stop stigma because, like I always say, the science can produce the medicine, but it is the communities that give the people living with HIV the courage to take that medicine. So we should stop discrimination. We should follow the data, target key populations, and also start mobilizing our own resources instead of depending on foreign aid.
All right, it's been a pleasure having this sit down with you, Henry Mutebe, who is the technical advisor with Uganda Country Coordinating Mechanism, and this is for the Global Fund. We've had a status check on tuberculosis, HIV, and malaria conditions that still do affect us on a daily as families, as communities, and as a country. But together, we can actually put our efforts together and make sure that it ends with you and me. This brings us to the end also of Morning at NTV. Thank you so much for having been with us. Coming up, Mwasuze Mutia Hai.